Hey, Weeded Weirdos. This is Hunter from Bourbon and More Bourbon. Today we have a very cool episode for you. We're going to dive into two um, very similar rare weeded bourbons. These are special releases. The Old Fitzgerald 11 year came out in about December, and Maker's Mark Cellar Aged 2025 came out in about September. Cellar Aged is a newer expression. They started in 2023, and last year was the third release, and they only release it once a year. The Old Fitzgerald, they do a spring batch, they do a fall batch, and then they do a third batch called the VVS, which has like a red label. This one has a black label, the spring has a green label. That's pretty much the biggest way to differentiate these. And cool, it comes in a really cool decanter. The Maker's Mark Cellar Aged also really cool, very cool label. It has that signature Maker's Mark red wax. Also very beautiful bottle. These are kind of cool. They have a very similar mash bill. Weeded bourbons still have to be a bourbon. They have to have at least 51% corn, but the secondary and third grain makeup of most bourbons is going to be then rye and then malted barley. With weeded bourbons, they replace the rye for wheat, and Maker's Mark uses red winter wheat. I'm not sure if Old Fitzgerald uses the same type of wheat, but it's supposed to be more softer, more smoother than like a spicier rye profile. So these are going to be more approachable for most people. They're going to have a little different characters than some other like high rye bourbons, and these are two of my favorite releases from last year. That I actually got the Old Fitzgerald in like February of this year. I did get the Cellar Aged around September last year, and we should be seeing the 2026 soon for both of these. MSRP on both of these, the Maker's Mark is a little bit higher. It's about $175 MSRP. You usually see them in like $200 to $250 range in like most stores with a little bit of markup. When these first got released, secondary was $400 to $500 plus. It's since come down a lot since market's kind of changed. The Old Fitz's though, these are a little harder to find. Secondary is a little bit more. However, the MSRP on these is only $150, so hopefully you're able to find one of those. But I think if you have to spend $175 to $250 on this particular release, this was really good. I think it's worth that. Over $300, I don't recommend it. There's other stuff in that range that we can recommend later. Other than that, the mash bill on these, as I said, was very similar. The Maker's Mark is 70 corn, 16 soft red winter wheat, and then the rest of the makeup is 14 malted barley. The Old Fitz is 68, 20, 12 corn, wheat, and then malted barley. So just a couple points here and there difference in their actual mash bill, a little bit different but very similar. They're also about the same ages. The Old Fitz is 11 year, 100 proof bottled in bond, so same distillery, same distilling season, as we mentioned in the last video. The Maker's Mark is a little bit higher proof. It's 112.9 proof, so it's got a little bit more. We're proof it on the Old Fitz, but I think it's close enough that we can compare the two. And let's see, Maker's Mark with the Cellar Aged, this came out in 2023, as I said, but they'd been planning this for a long time. I went to the distillery in 2019 and got to actually tour the cellar, and they told us something was in the works but wouldn't tell us what. But I got to check it out. It stays like a constant 47 to 51 degrees in the cellar year round. And what they do is they age like regular Maker's Mark cask strength for 6 to 8 years in just regular rick houses, and then they move it over to the cellar age to like age the rest of the time. The Maker's Mark is 11 year, 13 year, and 14 year blend. So there's a big chunk of time where it's in the cellar, where it's a little bit cooler aging, and that supposedly does something a little different that nobody else kind of does. But it was a neat process. It was really cool to see that, and when it first came out, I knew exactly what it was, and that was the thing that they were talking about when I did the tour. Um, Old Fitzgerald has a really cool history. It was really popularized by Pappy Van Winkle around the Prohibition time. He exchanged the rye in the recipe for wheat, and he bought the recipe, bought the brand for about $10,000 back then, and it was continued to be made, passed down, passed over. Julian Van Winkle had his hands on it a little bit until 1992. It was made at the Stitzel-Weller distillery, and then it went to Bernheim distillery, and then in 1999 Heaven Hill bought the Old Fitzgerald brand and Old Bernheim distillery. So from then on, it's now a Heaven Hill product, which is another huge sorry, we're dog sitting. Another huge distillery, just like Buffalo Trace or Jack Daniels or anything like that. Heaven Hill's huge, and we'll do a lot more videos on Heaven Hill soon. But let's get into these glasses. Let's start out with the Old Fitzgerald, the lower proof. Even for 100 proof, it's got a little bit of alcohol in the nose, but it's got a very mature nose. There's a lot of antique oak and cherry and leather, a little bit of cinnamon and caramel, like a deep dark black cherry. There's a good amount of spice, even though it's red winter wheat and not rye. This has a good oak spice to it. Still tons of cherry. This is a very dark wheated whiskey. Flavor wise, there's a lot of caramels and like burnt sugar notes, maybe a creme brulee that's like slightly over torched, and then that cherry's still there. It's got a very medium to long finish. It doesn't seem very viscous in the glass, but I am getting a nice velvety mouthfeel. I really like a silky velvety mouthfeel. Gives me kind of the signifier that this is a kind of a step up whiskey. This is not watered down everyday stuff. This is really good stuff. Cream soda, butterscotch, root beer, which I normally don't pick up, but I think a better note for this is cherry cola. Let's move on to the cellar aged. Maker's Mark Cellar Aged. Some people don't really like Maker's Mark. They think there's like a lactic note, kind of like a milky funkiness to Maker's Mark. I do get that, but I think I like that. I don't get it on all of their products, but some of their products I get it really, really heavy. On the nose, sorry, I went in for a sip. It smells so good. On the nose, I'm getting a little bit of cherry, a little bit lighter caramels, and a little bit more of a toffee than like a butterscotch toffee caramel. There's a little bit of spice, but it's a little bit muted. This nose is not as strong and is not as oaky. Getting some citrus peel, like orange peel or burnt orange, and maybe like a malted chocolate milk ball. Um, Goobers, is that what they're called? Maybe goobers. You're a goober, I'm a goober. On the palate, that also transfers. Those are both signs that these are really good whiskeys. Both of them. If the nose and the palate align, I'm a fan. Um, really signifies that I'm drinking something quality. Oh yeah, that cherry is killer on the Old Fitz. So much oakier. I'm probably gonna give it a better score. And then I'll give you some alternatives to these bottles. At least there'll be some new releases coming out soon if you can't find these past years. But there's a lot of stuff that's a little bit cheaper and easier to find than these that I think you'll also enjoy. Yeah, it's just cherry bomb oak, brown sugar, cinnamon. The nose on the Maker's Mark is a little funky. There is that lactic note, but it's like if you yes, cover some like cherries in like some kind of cream, maybe like a buttercream icing. And then there's just like cherries and chocolate on the palate. This is so different. But there's some really good sugary caramel and butterscotch, maybe. I like that too. That's really good. Not for everybody, but man, that's for me. Um, so, final tally on the Old Fitz. I'm going to give it um, solid 8.5 on the take scale. Um, the Maker's Mark Cellar Aged, I'm going to give it a little bit lower. I'm going to give it 8.2. Both very solid, both delicious. This is my first Old Fitz bottle. I was super stoked to get that. I got the 2024, and then this is my second one. I didn't get a chance to get the 2023, but heard that's even better. Everyone hated on the 24. I really liked it. I was such a huge fan because of me of waiting for it for years, but I do think the 25 is slightly better. It's got a little bit more going for it. Um, I don't know if I'm going to get the 2026 this year. Um, unless it's a really good value. If it's at MSRP, I'm getting both of these, obviously. For Maker's Mark, if you can't find this bottle, if you don't want to spend that kind of money on a wheated whiskey or Maker's Mark product, um, try any of the finishing series. Try Store Picks. The 46 cast strength is one of my favorites too. It gets really close to this without um, um, maybe the oakiness to it, but it's super close. It's on the right track. It's a fraction of the cost too. Um, Maybe Weller Full Proof. Um, Star Hill Farms would be actually. I think I liked Star Hill Farms last year as much as the Cellar Age last year. Um, they were like neck and neck, and it's half the price. If you find one this year, I heard they're really good. Haven't gotten one yet. And then for those desserty, butterscotchy flavors, the cherry notes that and the chocolate I get on the cellar aged Bernheim 10 year. It's about 70 to 80 bucks. I don't think people are going crazy for those, but I think it's really good. I think it's a good alternative to the cellar aged. I might go for that over the cellar aged because of the value. Any of those would work for the Old Fitz, but I think it's got a different profile. I think Weller 12 would be a good alternative. I think um, Larceny Barrel Proof. Um, Larceny and Old Fitz is the same mash bill. They're both made by Heaven Hill. It's just a different product line. The Old Fitz is a little bit higher end. The Larcenys are a little bit more shelfer friendly. Barrel proofs punch up. Sometimes they have really good proofs. Always enjoy those. Um, Other than that, please follow, like, subscribe. turn on notifications, leave me a comment. Until then, we'll see you next time.